Hi, my name's Anthony Turner. My guest today on behalf of the Small Business Institute is Jeff Brown, who is the Victorian Small Business Commissioner. Jeff, welcome. Thank you for spending some time with us.
You're welcome, Anthony.
Jeff, one of the things that probably I found, but probably by surprise more than anything else when I first met you a couple of years ago, was that not many people actually really know what the Small Business Commissioner's office is or does. Could you maybe give us a bit of an overview of what the office is about and what you do?
Sure, we've been around for 11 years, state government funded, but the role of Commissioner is actually independent of government.
Yes.
I've got a range of functions under legislation, but essentially we're a dispute resolution service for businesses who have disputes with other businesses.
Yes.
That's our core offering. We occasionally get commercial disputes between business and government, and obviously not-for-profits in there as well. But our core offering is quick, low-cost dispute resolution of commercial disputes between businesses.
And what sort of disputes typically would come across your desk?
I work under 5 pieces of legislation. 4 of those have quite specific dispute resolution obligations for those types of disputes.
Okay. Yes.
And the 5th is a more generic catch-all. We deal a lot with retail tenancy disputes between tenant and landlord under its own act. We also deal with disputes between owner-drivers and their hirers.
Yes.
We have a role in taxi disputes as of this year between an operator and a driver in certain circumstances. And we also deal with farm debt disputes, where a farmer is in default on a farm debt, try to resolve or help the farmer through that problem with the creditor.
Yes.
So each of those has their own act, and each of those has certain procedural elements we have to follow.
Yes.
But the catch-all is under the Small Business Commissioner Act, and that can deal with any other type of commercial dispute, which doesn't fall under those other 4 heads.
Right. And there is a sort of a process that, if I've got a dispute with somebody, I don't know, maybe maybe I think I'm being treated unfairly by a bigger business or something like that. Is that the sort of area that I can bring to you?
Absolutely. If it's a business-to-business dispute,
Yes.
it's a fairly broad scope that we have. So other than those 4 areas I mentioned, what's a commercial dispute? Well, it's things like franchising disputes between franchise or franchisee. It can be buying and selling a business where something's gone wrong.
Okay.
Distribution agreements that have gone wrong.
Yes.
Intellectual property arrangements that have gone wrong. Supply chain or service and products you need for your business. So we get a lot of disputes against, say, web development companies where what they've delivered doesn't meet the expectation or the contractual requirement of the buyer.
Okay. Yes.
So if you can point your finger at any type of commercial dispute between businesses, there's a contractual disagreement, then we can help.
So generally speaking, I've got a problem. I approach your office either by phone or by website or whatever I imagine. What then happens?
Firstly, we have a phone line, so you can call us on 1387 722 and get some useful advice, both on preventing disputes and what to do with the dispute you find yourself in.
Yes.
If the dispute continues, we ask you to send in a form which will tell us who you are, who the other party is, and what the problem is.
Yes.
Usually the process is my staff will contact you and the other party,
Yes.
and in many cases we'll try and resolve that dispute through a bit of shuttle negotiation or information provision.
Yes.
Last year, of 1,700 dispute applications, we settled only 30% by that early intervention.
Wow.
And that's at no cost to either party.
Okay.
If that doesn't resolve the dispute, then we offer a mediation service.
Right.
So I'll appoint an independent mediator, invite the 2 parties to sit around a table, and over the course of half a day or thereabouts, with tight confidentiality, try and resolve that dispute. And it's a resolution that the 2 parties are happy with. So it's commercial and pragmatic.
Yeah. Does that service cost a lot of money? Because and does it have the same sort of legally binding outcomes as, say, a court does?
Well, we're not a court, and the role of the mediator is not to make a judgment or determine who's right and wrong.
Yes.
The mediator's role is to help the parties come to an agreed commercial decision.
Yes.
We are a subsidised service, so each party pays $195 There are a couple of exceptions, but that's the most it is at the moment. And that's a highly subsidised rate. We pay the mediator a lot more than that.
Yes.
So it's a pretty cheap service. And the beauty is that if you can resolve a commercial dispute through mediation for $195 and half a day, it's a darn sight better than being dragged off to court or VCAT.
Yes, and the cost of lawyers and all of the things that go along with that. Yeah.
Now you can bring your lawyer along if you want. That's
Okay.
that's up
Yes.
to you, but you don't have to.
Right.
In terms of its binding status, it doesn't have the status of a court order,
Right.
but if a settlement is achieved, that will be documented,
Right.
and the two parties will sign it,
Yes.
and that becomes a new binding contract between those parties
Yes.
to resolve that dispute, subject to certain triggers and certain steps.
Sure. Yeah, and whatever's been the agreed criteria for that resolution. Yeah.
And if the mediation's conducted appropriately, then you wouldn't expect those parties to sign something they're not willing to comply with.
Yeah. Jeff, are there sort of many, I guess, common or frequent disputes that come across the desk that you look at them and say, you know, if only you'd done this up front, we probably wouldn't even have to go to this space? Are there any sort of common things like that that stand out?
Well, in terms of those 5 areas we deal with, retail lease disputes are the dominant one.
Yes.
So 65% of our disputes are between tenant and landlord in commercial premises.
Right.
The general commercial disputes, the things that don't fit into those heads, they really can be anything. They range from, as I said, franchising disputes, and we see quite a few of those, through to any type of contractual disagreement. We've also had breakups of partners and shareholders that we've mediated successful breakup of those organisations.
Okay. Yes. With your website and with the information that you put out there, is there sort of practical tools and templates to actually help people, form better agreements and relationships from the outset, rather than getting to the point of disagreement and dispute further down the track?
Well, we have a lot of information on our website, more typically about the obligations and rights under those various pieces of legislation, for example, for tenants or landlords, owner-drivers or hirers. And we also talk a lot about what mediation is and how it works,
Right.
what it is and what it isn't. And it is a voluntary process, so I've got no power to compel people to sit around the table.
Yep.
So we need to convince parties to participate in the process.
Okay, so a fair bit of negotiation goes on from your team to the businesses involved.
It can be, but one of the selling points is as I said earlier, about 30% of matters we settled before mediation,
Yep.
and our mediation settlement rates last year are over 80%.
Yeah.
So we know that if we can get people to engage with us, something about 90% of matters we can settle either prior to mediation or at mediation.
Wow, it's a great success ratio.
It is, and when the alternative is litigation,
Yes.
which we know that the costs and time and emotional trauma and distraction can be quite
Yes.
significant, particularly for small businesses. It often is sensible to have a pragmatic commercial settlement, even if you think you're absolutely in the right. It may be the best thing to do to have a negotiated outcome.
Yeah. And I can attest to that. There was a circumstance when I was actually mentoring a particular business and it was a franchisee negotiation or dispute that was going on, and certainly we came in. I was with the franchisee, and the franchisor was there obviously, and the mediator did an outstanding job of really helping both of the parties come to something which they could both work with to move on going forward. And at a cost of only $195 for each side is a very, very worthwhile and cost-effective way. I wouldn't say it takes out a lot of the tensions between the parties, but at the end result of that, the two parties did come up with something they could both work with to move forward, which was powerful.
The mediators often tell me that the best mediations are those where the parties coming into the room have got smoke coming out of their ears and won't talk to each other, and there's obviously a very strong problem in their relationship. When they walk out of the mediation room with their settlement, shaking hands and going down in the lift together,
Yes.
that's a terrific turnaround for the mediator.
Now, this service, Jeff, is it only available to people in the Melbourne area, or is it available right across Victoria?
There has to be some Victorian connection,
Yes.
but we can deal with disputes between a Victorian business and an interstate business, for example.
Yeah.
And we will hold the mediations, if we get to mediation, in location to suit the parties.
Okay.
So last year, 19% of, I think, nearly 900 mediations were conducted in regional Victoria.
Oh wow.
So I will send the mediator out, or we do have mediators located regionally.
Yes.
Send them out, pay their travel costs, accommodation if necessary, hire a venue. The parties come to wherever it might be, and they still only pay their $195.
Fabulous. Oh, well, it's a very interesting service. It's probably one that a lot of the listeners and viewers haven't been as aware of. Jeff Brown, Small Business Commissioner for Victoria, thank you for coming and spending some time with us.
You're welcome.